everyone and welcome to the Anime Zillia, and today let's talk about episode 9 of Inspectre. Now all in all, this episode wasn't too bad. I mean, it was more of a slower paced episode that was more plot heavy and more driven by a scenario. Because as we all thought, the main battle of this episode wasn't really the Koro versus Nase fight, but it was more the battle to convince the public that Nase isn't actually real in the first place. Now, the way they've done this in this particular episode kind of gives us a bit of the pacing format. So when we look at the pacing and how we can expect the other scenarios to go, then it's kind of like, okay, so they got the decisive battle right at the end. Even though we're on episode 9, it still feels like we're closing in towards the finish. So we can probably expect a few slower episodes. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, because this episode, like I said, was a bit slower. However, it was still pretty interesting when you think about the kind of things that Kotoko is actually saying. Yes, they're creating a lie, but it's meant to be convincing, and honestly, while watching this episode, it took a couple of takes, but I actually found myself, thinking that this is actually really plausible. So, the first strike, the main issue, the first scenario, whatever you want to call it, that Kotoko tries to clear up is the fact that the detective managed to die so easily because of a killer. And the fact that Nase was only involved because it was something that the killer basically created in order to make a loophole or a backdoor, if you will, for that killer to actually get away with the murder. Now, like I said, that is basically the crux of the episode in terms of what happens. So, we have 4 scenarios, and in those 4 scenarios, we know that one of them is going to work, or all of them are going to combine together to kind of work. Each scenario is going to basically chip away at the idea of the Still Lady Nase being real. And we could have one scenario per episode, because this series has 12 episodes and we're on episode 9. So episode 10 will be scenario 2, scenario 3 for 11, and we finish off with 4. However, personally, I would like it to have 3 and 4 or 2 and 3 in one episode, so that we have episode 12 as like a resolution kind of play out. So basically we could have a situation where Kotoko, Koro and Saki confront Rika and get her to atone for what she's done. Maybe that's how they're going to go. But we do see a clip of Rika using her powers. And it's not really a reveal that she's using it to counteract Kotoko's kind of attempts to sabotage Nase's existence. However, as we know, Rika has the ability to change the future as she wishes, just like Koro does. And this was predictable. We knew this was going to happen, but this wasn't meant to be a shocking factor. The hero's first attempt never actually work. They're meant to be thwarted. The public isn't going to be 100% persuaded by what Kotoko says, first of all. It's going to take some attempts. It's going to be like, I kind of thought of it like a boxing match. You jab, 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 you wear your opponent down until eventually all the jabs, all the cracks basically join together and they shatter completely. Now, that was a really weird kind of analogy, I know, but it kind of works. However, the visuals that we get of Rika still sitting in that chair, like she was when she killed herself to first use her ability, kind of had me a bit confused, because we get told that there's a possibility that Rika is adding her own posts to this wiki forum and chat group, which is kind of a bit strange, because it's like, how is she doing that if she's still in the chair, not on her computer? So is she using her phone, or is she just using the ability? That's just something that confused me a little bit. Hopefully it gets cleared up in future episodes. Either way, it's a plot device, it's anime. It's not really anything too dramatic or troubling, so to speak. Now then, the explanation as to why Kotoko was suggesting that there's a killer and not a natural ghost. And the reasoning as to why the killer would go through all the trouble of setting up this scheme, which uses a pendulum tied to a steel slab to basically smash the detective in the face, killing him in one blow. Making it look like Nase is the one who killed him because it's like a smashed face, like a beam, one hit, that's kind of the gist of what the killer was trying to do. And Kotoko basically tries to suggest that this is the case. And the way that she does that, I actually thought was really intriguing. Because she kind of concludes that it's actually got to be a female, most likely. But in doing this, and in setting up in a way that she's explained, Kotoko then presents the idea of this female that would actually postpone or imitate the Steel Lady Nase would actually give the police the impression that maybe a more muscular person or built man or lady was the one who actually killed the detective because of, the popularity and the fact that the detective was actually a judo master. So nobody would actually believe that the judo master would be beaten by a girl. So the police would kind of be thinking, okay, if it's not a ghost, then it's definitely a big buff guy or female. So this created a kind of like a loophole, because even if they find out that it wasn't a stronger person than the actual detective himself, then creating the Steel Lady Nase would allow herself to have a backdoor / escape route to act as like a decoy in order to evade being captured or being put under suspect by the police and other detectives. Now, for me personally, I thought that the way they explained this, it's a lie, it's meant to sound convincing, and it really did. The visual effects I really did like. We had Kotoko standing in like this virtual realm of sorts, and screens were popping up here and everywhere to argue the lie that was being presented. Because Kotoko actually states in this episode that it's meant to be convincing because it's a lie. However, because it's a lie, then there's a good chance that people aren't going to believe it. And that's always the case. People are skeptical. That's true. People don't believe everything that they want to, especially if they desperately want to believe in something like a ghost or an apparition. So trying to change someone's views like that is, it's difficult. So it's not going to work first time, just like we see in this episode. Now, for me personally, it was being explained a bit too fast. Like, it took me a couple of tries, maybe 3, to understand some of what was being said. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing, as it's somewhat realistic in a way, because the fact that Kotoko doesn't pause for too long between questions and rebuttalments would kind of add more impact and more kind of substance to what she's actually saying. Like, if you put it into a personal perspective, if someone's trying to persuade you of something and they're trying to get you to buy something, or they're trying to convince you to do something, and say, for example, they're going, oh my god, this is the best thing ever, you're never going to regret it. You ask them a question, like, say, what's the risks? And they're like, okay, the risks are, If they pause for too long, or if they start stuttering, or they, slip up any tiny amount, then that's going to basically discredit whatever is being said. That basically would add doubt in the person that's listening to it. And like I said, taking long breaks to think would kind of make the story sound less believable. So the addition of, not having those long pauses and not having the stuttering, and making it so that Kotoko is typing away fast and explaining everything quite fast, makes realistic sense because of what they're trying to do. It's just my reading abilities and my processing of the brain. Not being able to keep up, I suppose. That's why it took me a couple of tries. Who knows? Anyway, the addition of the killer being a female officer being added into this scenario was actually a little great it was a great detail that they added in because it helped add more believability to the story. But it was also a little dig at Saki, and I thought that was pretty cool. Now, the bit of action that we get between Koro and Nase was okay. It was nothing special, but I love the fact that throughout this whole kind of fight, Koro's expression on his face just screaming out the fact that he just doesn't give a damn. At this point, his face is being smashed in, he's being knocked off himself, he's trying to put up a fight, doing pretty well, but still ultimately he's died twice now, and his expression just he just doesn't care. But he knows he has to kind of go forward for this plan to actually succeed. Now, we get a little segment of Rika kind of manipulating the future and kind of having it like a swirling ball in her hand. And that intrigued me a little bit because I didn't really make much sense of that. However, I am intrigued to see how far they're going to go with this. And all in all, I thought this was a great episode. It was fun, it was entertaining, it held my attention. Even though it was more of a complicated, story-based kind of talking episode. Sometimes you can have a lot of action where it's just talking. For example, Death Note. That's a great series in where there's hardly no action whatsoever. It's just people talking and trying to persuade the others or think of the scenario and how they can go about. And this episode is pretty much like that. You're thinking of the scenario, you're trying to convince people, you're trying to keep it entertaining, and with the visual effects, the sound effects, the twists and turns, and the small kind of intervals of Koro versus Nase, I thought made the episode entertaining. So, actually, on that basis, I would say it's a good episode, and I can't wait to see what happens in episode 10. The storylines in where they got the scenarios. At a quick guess, I would say one of the scenarios has to be about the guy who saw Nase first as a ghost and derailed off the side of the bridge or cliff, because that's what the episode ends on. So they're going to have to kind of explain that and say how that was done. Maybe they do a Mr. Satan type of thing and it's that's just smoke and mirrors. Who knows? And then the other two, it's a little bit difficult for me to kind of comment on because I actually still haven't caught up with the series yet. So there's still a big block in what I don't understand. However, hopefully before the next episode, I might have time to catch up. But that's for me to do and not for you. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Apologies about the lack of visuals and, the little bit of less professionalism in this one. I'm away at the moment, so I can't exactly do what I normally like to do with these reviews. However, I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new so you never miss a video from me. Comment all your thoughts down below on this episode and let me know what you think the other scenarios could entail. Other than that, have a great day and I'll catch you next time. Bye.